Hello guys, and welcome back to Gaming History with Ripley. My name is Ripley, and in this episode we'll be talking about one of the most best-selling console of all time, the Sony PlayStation. There is many reasons why the PlayStation is extremely popular, but one of these reasons is because it beat Nintendo and Sega in the video game market. In 1988, a sound programmer at Sony bought a Nintendo for her daughter, a NES or a Famicom depending on where you live. He was very unimpressed with the sound that the system can produce, so he started working on a sound chip by himself for the system. That chip went well in development, and he even pitched it to Nintendo without even asking his bosses at Sony. Ken Kutaragi almost got fired from his job at Sony. However, Sony greenlit the chip, and he was allowed to add the chip into the Super Nintendo as it's known in America, and the Super Famicom as it is known in Japan. Sony and Nintendo were becoming business partners from their work with the Super Nintendo sound chip. They were becoming close enough companies that they decided to work on a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo. The project was going pretty far in development, and they were having a good time making it too. However, Nintendo was getting pretty skeptical, so they decided to look at the deal again. And then according to that deal, they weren't going to make any money from the CD add-on, not even for the games, and that's what Nintendo is really good at. So of course, they went to Sony and asked, hey, can we please make some profit off of this too? And they said, no, so that's why you shouldn't trust big corporate companies. After that meeting with Sony, Nintendo went to Philips, which was basically another electronic company, when they asked them if they wanted to work together on a CD add-on. They said yes, because they did have experience in the market because they released an expensive game console called the CDI. This system was a multimedia system that really didn't do very well. After that disappointing stuff, Sony decided that they are going to make their own competing console called the Sony PlayStation. Now you know that console. And then it was going to have a CD-ROM drive, and it was going to have a cartridge slot that played Super Nintendo games. And of course, it was done illegally because they don't like Nintendo anymore. And that CD-ROM drive could play CDs and CD-ROM games. Pretty cool, huh? Nintendo was worried that they were going to make their own competitor. So, Nintendo decided that they were going to make a fair deal with all three of these companies. Nintendo, Sony, and Philips. This was a fair deal because Sony was making money on all the systems sold. Philips was making the money on all the CD-ROM drives that were in those systems that were sold. And then Nintendo made money on all the games that were sold. Now Nintendo got what they wanted, and all the companies were getting a good amount of money. While the CD-ROM project was going really well, Nintendo was still working on technology for their cartridge-based games. Yeah, remember those? Well, they made a chip called the FX chip. Then Nintendo released a game called Donkey Kong Country. This game had a technique called pre-rendered graphics, and what that means is that instead of your normal graphics on the system, the graphics were made with CGI graphics, so it would look really good. So obviously Nintendo had to make their CD-ROM drive more powerful than CGI graphics. Eventually, Nintendo started working on their next-gen console, the Nintendo 64. So Nintendo really didn't see the need for a Super Nintendo CD-ROM drive. So Nintendo decided to cancel the CD-ROM drive project and cancel their relationships with Philips and Sony too. Now this got Sony even more mad. After the project was canceled, Sony went to Nintendo's worst rival at the time, Sega, and pitched an idea for a next-gen console work together. Sega of America loved the idea and even pitched it to Sega of Japan. However, Sega of Japan denied it. More than denying it, they were actually pretty rude to them, saying that they were an electronics company and they didn't know anything about making video games, even though they worked on a CD add-on for like 4 years. So Sony decided to go back to square one with their PlayStation project and made it a next generation console so it can compete with whatever Nintendo and Sega is putting out next. In 1994, the Sony PlayStation launched in Japan. However, that story isn't as good as the part that came out in America. Then I'm sorry to all the international viewers of this channel, but you're willing to agree. Let's start talking about it. At the very first E3, which is a gaming expo, Sega announced their next-gen console, which was called the Sega Saturn. This powerful console cost $399 and was surprise launching 4 months before schedule. This confused the people working at the stores, and some stores refused to have Saturns because of it. Sony still wanted revenge on both Nintendo and Sega. So what they did was instead of the long speech that they were comparing, they only said 2 words, $299, which was $100 cheaper than what Sega was putting out. The crowd went wild.
Hello, citizens of Europe. As spokesperson for SAPS, the Society Against PlayStation, I'd like to talk to you about a menace threatening humanity. It's happening right here, in our very homes, and corrupting the lives of our loved ones. Yes, friends, I'm talking about this. It may look like a harmless bagel toaster, but inside is a deadly donut. How do you know PlayStation is not a normal game system? It carries these telltale signs. Scientists say its effects are mind-boggling. Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Here we have a normal, healthy young man. And here we have a fellow who's been experimenting with PlayStation for only a few minutes. Proof that we saps must be on our guard. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.
Sega released their console as promised. However, it didn't sell well. This was because not much games were ready for launch, and the ones that were at launch weren't very good. Also, the console was expensive, and of course, it wasn't at any good stores anyway. Since Sony wasn't rushing their console like Sega was, they had a couple more months to work on their Sony PlayStation, so that's why it is more powerful and polished than the Sega Saturn. Sony also had a head start at Nintendo's console, the Nintendo 64, which had been delayed for 1 more year in 1996. The console also had cartridges, which were seeming obsolete since the PlayStation had CDs. Since Nintendo still had cartridge games, many of their favorite third-party developers slowly started moving to Sony since they had CD-ROMs. This allowed them to have bigger games. This also allowed them to have CD audio in their games, so it won't be muffled like chip-generated audio. The PlayStation began to be the best-selling console of all time until 2005, when it was beat by its successor, the PlayStation 2. And the PlayStation 2 is still the best-selling console of all time. So that's pretty good for a newbie, if you know what I mean. Also, I neglected to talk to you about the controllers, one of the most iconic parts of the system itself. The first controller was basically a Super Nintendo controller, but they added 2 prongs to make it more comfortable in the hands. They also added 2 more triggers into the back of the controller. The next controller was even better, as it added 2 thumbsticks. Basically, what a thumbstick is, it was a flat thing that you could use to control 3D games comfortably. Think it like a joystick, but smaller, and you can control it with your thumb. Let's talk about the accessories. The first notable one was the memory card. Now basically with cartridges, you could just put a battery inside of them so you could save your data that way. However, you can't fit a battery into a flat disk. So what they did was that they put the battery into a memory card, so you can save your games that way. Another accessory is the screen attachment. Now, this thing only worked on the PlayStation's redesign, the PlayStation 1. It was called the PlayStation 1 because it released alongside the PlayStation 2 in 2000. So, they didn't want any confusion going wrong with that. So, back to the screen thing. Now, basically what this did was it allowed you to play your PlayStation games portably, as long as you had a power outlet, that is. The PlayStation became one of the best-selling consoles, and that was Sony's first console to be released, that is. Sony's wisdom when they're releasing this console was beyond me. When they definitely got their revenge, because now Nintendo still has a pretty powerful competitor, all because they canceled one CD add-on. Well, next time, don't cancel a CD add-ons, I guess. Also, PlayStation games are also compatible with the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, and on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, you could buy PlayStation games on the PlayStation Store. So that's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and until then, game on!